What's up, guys? It's Sode back with you. 0-2 yesterday, NBA. I don't know what to say about that, man. We had the Miami Heat. I mean, they were winning that game throughout the first half, and I'm like, oh, okay, they're looking pretty good. They're winning outright. And then all of a sudden, they went from a 5-point lead, I think, in the third quarter to about a 30-point deficit in like less than a quarter. I'm like, what the hell just happened? Where I think the Knicks, even without Brunson, they went on like a 47-19 run or something. Such ridiculous bullshit. I don't even know what to tell you about that. And the Spurs didn't get there either. We're right around the break-even point of the year again. This March has been horrible. It's a massive slump that we have to get out of. College basketball has been a huge part of it. College basketball has been terrible. NBA has been pretty good, but not yesterday. I don't know what else to say, man. It's just, and what sucks is that like all of my leans were correct. I'm pretty sure in the NBA. Fuck it. Let's move on to today, man. Forget about that, and we'll talk about today. We got college basketball action here, man. The NIT is going on, where we got Kent State and St. Bonaventure. I call this the not in tournament, by the way, but some of these teams do get motivated for it. The home teams are the higher seeds in the NIT opening rounds here, so they're hosted by the higher seed at their campus. So Kent State is having to go to St. Bonaventure. So a lot of times you will see the home team have a bit of an edge here, especially because the road team isn't really familiar with playing in that home team's environment. Kent State got bounced in the MAC semifinals in an upset. They should have won against Miami, Ohio. Kent State is the better defense, so Kent State may be coming into this game a little bit angry, coming off of a loss like that where they lost as a favorite up against St. Bonaventure, who I mean, they got bounced somewhere in the A10 tournament. I just don't know how good St. Bonaventure really is. I think they've been overrated most of the year. So you look at these teams' records, Bonaventure's record. Actually, I was going to say it looks better. Their home record is better than Kent State's road record is, of course. I mean, that's not a surprise. I thought St. Bonaventure had a better looking record than Kent State does. They don't really. But Kent State, I would kind of look in their direction just because I kind of like their defense. St. Bonaventure got bounced by VCU in the A10 tournament there. That game wasn't really that close, though. So I don't really have a whole huge angle on this game. 70% of tickets, 72% of the cash coming in on Bonaventure. Let me zoom in here. I totally forgot. I need to zoom in on all this crap. Yeah, there we go. Because it looks way too small on the screen there. Jacksonville State at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is 6-point favorite with 91% of the cash coming in on them. 51% of tickets on Jacksonville State. Now, in the NIT, a lot of times you want to fade these big conference teams, but you really want to fade the like perennial powerhouse teams that are used to being in the tournament year after year, and then they fall short. But this year, we don't have any of them here. We don't have Indiana. We don't have Ohio State. So we're now like we've reached a phase of college basketball where those teams don't really have that much of a sense of pride anymore. They don't play in the NIT. They might get offered an opportunity to play in the NIT, might get invited to it, the National Invitational Tournament, and they will turn it down. A bunch of those teams will turn it down, which I hate because, as I talked about in my bracket video that I did, which I'll probably do another one to show my actual bracket, by the way. I'm going to show it. Indiana would be a team because they're like a perennial tournament team, like a blue blood team. They're a team that I would look to fade because they're really disappointed, most likely, thinking they were going to get into the tournament up until the very last second. You want to fade teams like that in the NIT, but we don't even have situations like that anymore. And I think some of them are playing in the college basketball crown tournament now, which is a new tournament in Las Vegas, which they only invite like power conference teams to it. So those teams are kind of going over there. I think West Virginia is in it, and they would be a team to kind of look to fade as well, especially now that West Virginia is actually suing the NCAA for rigging the bracket, basically, because the commissioner of the like selection committee or the chair of it is the athletic director at North Carolina. So I do think there is some shenanigans going on there, especially because I think he makes extra money if UNC gets into the tournament. And of course, he goes on TV and claims, oh no, they make me leave the room when they talk about North Carolina. Yeah, okay. But they know that you're on the committee, man. Like, they know that you're the chair. Like, do you not think that there are, like mal-incentives here? Anyway, back to Georgia Tech, though. When you get a team like Georgia Tech, who's not one of those teams that's used to being in the tournament all the time, you tend to want to look to teams like that in the NIT because they get a chance to keep playing. They had probably close to a 500 record on the season, and they usually play well. They're usually the better team because they're the power conference team. They're usually more battle-tested, and they get the home advantage. So I do agree with the market indicators on Georgia Tech, but problem is that Georgia Tech, when we last saw them play, they actually played Duke really close in the ACC tournament. So I don't really know if I'd want to play Georgia Tech coming off of that, but Jacksonville State went to their conference final in the Conference USA and lost to Liberty. So they were pretty close to being able to get into the tournament too, although they didn't lose that game by like a slim margin or anything. So another thing that I'll maybe look for is teams that like just missed winning their conference tournament by a little bit like that, like were that close to getting into the tournament, maybe looking to go against teams like that. UT Chattanooga, or just Chattanooga, which keeps getting spelled wrong on pregame, is at Middle Tennessee, a battle of Tennessee. So a lot of these games are kind of close in proximity. These teams close in proximity to one another in some of these matchups. Middle Tennessee down from 3.5 to 2.5. So money looks like it's coming in on Chattanooga. 78% of tickets, 80% of the cash coming in on them. I don't disagree with it. Chattanooga is the better team. And both of these teams got bounced in their respective conference tournaments with like a couple of rounds to go, I think. So I don't really see a huge advantage one way or the other, but I think Chattanooga is the better team there. Arkansas State is hosting St. Louis. Arkansas State up from 3.5 to 5. 84% of tickets, 95% of the cash on Arkansas State. Money coming in on them. I don't disagree with the Arkansas State side here either. I think they kind of fly under the radar a little bit. As odds makers are telling you, they're actually the better team, but people, I think, might have a tendency to want to look towards St. Louis. Oh, I'm getting points with Robbie Avila there. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar kind of looks tempting if you don't know who Arkansas State is. I don't love it. St. Louis, I mean, they got bounced in their conference tournament in some, I think they played a pretty close game wherever they wound up losing. I forget who they lost to, but they had a close, I'm pretty sure it was a pretty close game that they lost. Arkansas State, though, they did go to their conference final, I'm pretty sure, and they lost to Troy in the final in a really close game as well. So I don't really want to come in and play Arkansas State either. I think they could give St. Louis some matchup problems because Arkansas State plays at a pretty fast pace and they have a pretty like high scoring offense, which isn't really something you see a whole lot of in the Atlantic 10. And again, it's an unfamiliar venue for St. Louis. Whereas I think Chattanooga, Middle Tennessee, that's a little bit, there's less of an unfamiliarity factor there. The game that I will play, though, and we're getting more value on this now. I like Oklahoma State. I don't know if it's -6 or -5.5 right now, whatever the number is. Might be able to get 5.5. It's actually down from 7 to 6 with reduced juice. I like the Oklahoma State side here. They have 66% of the cash on them, 64% of tickets coming in on Wichita. Seems like the public kind of wants to come in and take the points with Wichita. And I think, I mean, if you look at both of these teams, you know both these teams are not that good, even if the public knows that Wichita State is from the lesser conference, and they certainly are. That's part of the handicap here is that Oklahoma State is way more battle-tested. I mean, they played in the Big 12. Wichita played in the American Athletic, which is a terrible conference. Hold on, let me I think my audio is just a little bit too loud, man. I'm listening to myself in the let me bring this down a little bit. Hopefully this is a little bit better there, but we'll see. I don't want to be popping, man. Everything's popping off. If you got to turn up your volume, at least I won't be sounding as crazy, as loud. Anyway, Oklahoma State obviously played the more difficult schedule. Wichita State's conference sucks, but the public still is going to look at this and say, oh, I get an Oklahoma State team that's below 500, and I'm getting points with a team that's above 500 in Wichita. And what the public just saw most recently is they saw Wichita almost take Memphis to the wire 4 days ago. They were in the American Athletic Conference tournament, and they almost had a chance to beat Memphis, man. I think they came back in that game, and they only lost the game by 3 points or something. So they played Memphis really tough, whereas Oklahoma State has more rest here. They've been off for a week, and I think they lost in the first round of the Big 12 tournament, I believe. Yeah, I think that I laid the points with Cincinnati in this one. I liked the spot for Cincinnati. Cincinnati bounced Oklahoma State. So the last time we saw these two teams, Oklahoma State was getting run out of the gym by a Cincinnati team that gets no public respect. Nobody thinks that they're good, and they play ugly basketball too. Whereas Wichita State, they almost beat Memphis, or at least based on the scoreboard and the fact that they got close at the end. So that's what the public saw last. So I think they're going to be swung by that. Whereas I think Oklahoma State getting embarrassed in the Big 12 tournament, just losing by 20-something points or whatever, and that was their last showing, having a week off to kind of just forget about that and readjust, and they get to play again. I think that's a big positive for Oklahoma. So they're the more rested team and the embarrassed team. When you have that long layoff, if it's coming off a bad performance, you tend to use that to like fix what went wrong. Whereas Wichita State, they're coming off that close call, so that's going to kind of put them in a hangover spot, and they have less time to kind of get over that. So I think there are some advantages to Oklahoma State here for sure. And the fact that Oklahoma State, if they do well in the NIT, they could get back to 500. So I think that's kind of a motivator too. Like if you could do something about it, you don't want to have a losing season. So I think if they get these wins, I think they might get thrown onto their overall record. I'm not sure. But I mean, in their minds, like it might be a mental thing too, where it's like, well, we got to get back to 500 guys. So I like all that as well. Oklahoma State's actually been good at home too. They're 12-3 at home in Stillwater. So they've been pretty good at home. Wichita below 500 on the road and having to go face a big conference team. A lot of reasons to like Oklahoma State here. And if that's not enough, the Ken Bomb numbers of Oklahoma State winning this game, I believe by about 6. Oklahoma State, they're right at the 100 line. They're the 100th best team in the country. Wichita's further down. I don't even know where Wichita's at. Wichita's down to 135. But if you look at these, both teams are better defensively than offensively, but Oklahoma State's better on both sides of the ball than Wichita is. Both teams play somewhat fast, but Oklahoma State plays really, really fast, which might throw Wichita off a little bit as well because Oklahoma State just plays faster than what Wichita is used to. And Wichita plays in a conference where some of these teams slow it down. I know Memphis doesn't, and they did play them last, but Oklahoma State's going to try to speed it up even faster than that. Wichita also, Ken Baum's telling you their record is probably better than it should be, as they're 79th in the luck index. So that's also not great as far as they're concerned. I know Oklahoma State's also high up in the luck index, though. So both these teams kind of have overperformed according to Ken Baum, but still, I still like this. And Oklahoma State's faced a significantly better schedule, as I said, a stronger schedule. I mean, that's obvious. They play in the Big 12. They're really fast-paced, 15th in the country. They're also top 100 in defense. So they have one of those weird profiles where they're a better defensive team, even though they play fast, which isn't really a good profile if you want to look for like a championship team in the NCAA tournament, like St. John's. Unfortunately for them, I would not pick them to win the championship. But in a one-off game like this, I think it might be beneficial. I think that's fine. Oklahoma State, like I said, they're actually better on both sides of the ball and significantly better defensively than Wichita. So I will lay the points with Oklahoma State in that game. And again, the spread looks misleading because they have the worst record. Cal State Northridge is at Stanford. Stanford down from 7 to 6.5, but they got 62% of cash on them. So weird common theme where we see the cash coming in on a lot of these home teams, even though the line has actually moved down on some of them. But cash looks like it's on almost every one of these home teams. But again, like I said, I do think these home teams do have a bit of an edge in a lot of these games, which I think is why you're seeing that. Even though the lines moved down to 6.5 there, 62% of tickets on Northridge. Stanford, I mean, I know the ACC was down. They play in the ACC this year, but they are the better team. They're still a power conference team. Northridge played decently. I mean, both teams got bounced somewhere in like the middle of their conference tournaments, so not a whole lot to see there. Probably comes down to just the fact that Stanford is the better team, as long as they're motivated enough. I mean, I know they were kind of talked about as a bubble team very briefly, but I don't think they really thought they were going to get into the NCAA tournament, and they're not a program that's been there often recently. So, and then UC Riverside, Santa Clara. This one is weird, man. Santa Clara is an 11-point favorite. They are public, 86% of tickets, only 80% of the cash. So the cash percentage is against them, but there are some reasons to like Santa Clara in that the last time we saw them, they lost in their conference tournament to Pepperdine, man. As I think Santa Clara was like a 15, 16-point favorite. That is totally embarrassing. So I think the fact that they get to play again, you're going to see a focused Santa Clara team because they don't want that to be their last game. Getting upset by Pepperdine and bounce from the conference tournament, that's ridiculous, man. Also look for Santa Clara to maybe be seeking some revenge next season, but that's crazy. So I would kind of be leaning to the Santa Clara side a little bit for that reason. Riverside lost in the Big West tournament at some point. This is a weird situation for Riverside, by the way, because some weird situation happened where they got invited to 2 tournaments. I think UC Riverside had some like affiliation with the CIT, I want to say, or CBI, one of those two, one of those other 2 tournaments. So they were going to be in that one. I think they were affiliated with whatever tournament that was. So they had to play in that tournament, but this is on the NCAA, man, and the creators of the NIT. It's so stupid. So I think we have another lawsuit happening, probably. So we don't just have West Virginia suing over the North Carolina situation, but I think we're going to see South Alabama suing the NCAA for this, because what happened was UC Riverside, they got invited to the NIT, but they were already in this like CBI or CIT, whichever one it was. And I think they told the NIT or the NCAA, well, hey, we can't play in the NIT because we're affiliated with this other tournament. So thank you, but we have to play in this other one. So, okay, so that was going to happen. So then the NIT invited South Alabama to take their spot, which was kind of stupid given how tentative the situation was. And then you see Riverside, maybe they're somewhat at fault too, because they somehow were able to get out of that affiliation, maybe knowing that they just gotten invited to the NIT. They said, let's see if we can do something about playing there and getting out of this other tournament, which they did. So they broke away from that affiliation, got their spot in the NIT that was given to them. So, what happened was now they're back, and they had the NIT offer first. So the NIT or the NCAA actually then rescinded South Alabama's offer and gave it to UC Riverside. And now South Alabama doesn't play in any of these tournaments at all. And they should be in the NIT, really. They were semifinalists in the Sun Belt at the very least. And they were the regular conference champs in the Sun Belt. So I think every regular conference champ actually gets an invite to the NIT. So it's all a very, very weird situation. I don't know how that's going to affect Riverside's state of mind here, but I mean, I guess I don't know how to handicap that. So we're not going to play that game. What's happening? Andrew, I tend to disagree with you on a lot. Beatles are nothing more than a psyop. He might be right. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I like some Beatles music. I think they're overrated just because everybody kind of hails them as like the best rock band ever. I do like a lot of their music, especially in their psychedelic, like later period. Some of their early rock music, pretty good as well. I mean, certainly a good band. There are a lot of conspiracies around them, that they're hidden messages in their music. So I can kind of see the conspiracy angle there. I don't know a whole lot about the Catcher in the Rye angle there, like what the tie-in is there. I read that book. I've read it a couple of times. I have it on my shelf, actually. I haven't read it recently, but I like the book. I mean, I haven't read it in quite a while, but I guess that book, maybe that book is a psyop. I don't know. I kind of liked it. I like back in high school, though, and whatever. Anyway, let's get back to this because I got to get this done. Of course, the NCAA tournament is starting tonight. I mean, we got to talk about that. It's the first 4, man. The first game up is St. Francis, Pennsylvania, and Alabama State playing into a 16 seed for the right to play Auburn in the first round, which is going to be on Thursday. Alabama State up from 3-4 with juice, so there is money coming in on Alabama State. 72% of the tickets, 79% of the cash money coming in on Alabama State, the SWAC champions against the Northeast Conference champions. The Northeast Conference is probably the worst conference in basketball, but we constantly see the Northeast Conference do well in these games, man. Like they had Fairleigh Dickinson. Fairleigh Dickinson was the worst team in the entire field that year, 2 years ago, and they won this opening game in the first 4, and then they upset Purdue. So the NEC does have a habit of overperforming in these games, even though I would agree with Alabama State with this line move because they are the better team. St. Francis, PA, I mean, they've just been getting lucky and game after game. And the way that they got through their tournament was they got fouled on a 3 in the quarterfinals in a tied game on the last possession and made those free throws to win the game on walk-off free throws. Then in the semifinal, it happened again, and they pulled off an upset, I think, in that game against Long Island, at Long Island, after making a huge comeback. Should have lost that game. They get another walk-off foul on a 3 and won that game. And then in the final, as double-digit underdogs at Central Connecticut, They had the final possession basically in a tied game as well, and they got an and one. So it wasn't a foul on a three, but it was another walk-off foul play where they did get a 2-point bucket on it and then a free throw. So they won all three of those games basically on a walk-off foul on the possession. Just really, really insane. I don't know how they can really keep that up in a game like this. I mean, St. Francis is kind of a wild card because they do take a lot of threes. They do shoot pretty well. They probably shoot better than Alabama State does, but St. Francis turns the ball over a ton, and Alabama State doesn't. They protect the ball, so it's like pick your poison, basically. I do think Alabama State is the better team, but the way these opening round games go and the craziness, these games are in Dayton, Ohio, by the way. Really hard to judge what's going to happen. The NEC, like I said, even though they've given you the worst team in the field repeatedly, it seems like they keep winning these games. I think Wagner won one of these games last year too, if I remember correctly, whatever the case is. And then the game that everybody's talking about, North Carolina and San Diego State. North Carolina up from 3 to 4.5. This is going to be to play into an 11 seed to play Ole Miss. And another like weird situation here is that usually the Tuesday games, both of these teams are going to play. The teams that win these games are going to play on Thursday, but that's not the case with this North Carolina game. I think maybe we've seen this one or two other times, but the winner of this game is going to play on Friday. So they actually will get an extra day of rest. They'll have a slight rest advantage against the team that they're going to play, even though that does mean the team that they're going to play has an extra day to prepare, whereas like the quick turnaround time. So there's kind of an advantage both ways there, really. Or actually, they won't have an extra day to prepare. What am I saying? The team that they're playing against has to play tomorrow. Or no, wait, what am I even saying? No, it's an opening game. I don't even know what I'm saying. No, the team that they're playing against doesn't have to play at all. My bad. What am I saying? So the team that they're playing against will have an extra day, though, to think about it and prepare. They'll know who their opponent is for one extra day. But it does give North Carolina a little bit of extra rest, although I don't know if that'll halt their momentum. I keep assuming North Carolina is going to win this game. That might not be the case. I think they will. They are the favorite here. They are the better team, although Ken Pom only has them winning this game by 2 or 3. North Carolina is the better team in Ken Pom's metrics, but San Diego State plays slow. North Carolina plays fast. San Diego State plays defense, so they're better defensively. North Carolina's public, 72% of tickets, only 71% of the cash, but the money move I do think is real for it to have been driven up that much off of a semi-key number 3 all the way up to 4.5 and almost to 5, which is another kind of key number in basketball. So I think there is actual money coming into North Carolina. Maybe there's like some disagreement with the professionals there. I like the fact that, of course, North Carolina is that one team that everybody's saying shouldn't be here at all. So that's going to give them motivation. They're going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder for that reason. But in their last game that they played, they lost to Duke. And that was like what they thought was going to put them in, but they are in anyway. So I don't know how much that matters, but still, they almost beat Duke and they lost on kind of a bullshit lane violation call that usually doesn't get called. So normally, I would say you got to fade North Carolina when they're coming off of a game like that because they'd be in a hangover spot. But I don't think you can really have a hangover spot when you're playing in the tournament now, man, and you got in and you didn't think you were going to be in. So I think that the motivational factors, I think, should be there for them, where it's going to be more so the case. Everybody's saying this team shouldn't be there. So I think that's going to drive them, and they are the better team over San Diego State. If you look at the Ken Pom metrics and whatever, the Mountain West doesn't have a good track record in the tournament, although San Diego State does. San Diego State's got a good coach, though, Dutcher. I think he probably is the better of the two coaches. I mean, Hubert Davis or whatever his name. Hubert Davis, is that? I forget, whatever his name. Hubert, whatever the hell, has not been very good for North Carolina. He's been really, really hit or miss, really. So there are some advantages to San Diego State. The slowdown style, the defense, and the coaching could maybe help them out in this game, and they're getting points as the better defense. So I said that I might play North Carolina because of the motivational angle, but I won't actually do it. Let's go over to NHL here. We got a big NHL slate. Ottawa and Montreal is a pretty big game because these teams are kind of still fighting for the wild card spots, but Ottawa's really put themselves in a situation where they're sitting pretty nicely for a wild card spot now. So Montreal needs this game more, and that's the way that I would look. Montreal's still really kind of fighting to try to get into the playoffs. Ottawa looks like they're pretty decently set now. I think they have about a 5-point lead right now in the last wild card slot. Ottawa down from minus 135 to minus 131, 97% of tickets, 99% of the cash. Don't know if that cash percentage is accurate. I think the line moving down is probably more accurate. Again, I think the need is there for Montreal. Both teams coming off big games. Ottawa just beat Toronto. That's a big win for them. So they could be in a little bit of a letdown. Montreal is coming off a big win over Florida. So that could put them in a little bit of a letdown as well. But I think Montreal is less prone to the letdown here because they're trying to get into the playoffs. So they need to win these games. And they're not traveling. They're staying at home. Although Ottawa only going from Toronto to Montreal, not really a whole lot of travel there. But that's what's going on there. Excuse my sniffling here. Calgary is actually fighting to get into the playoffs. Whereas the Rangers are coming off a loss to Edmonton. Rangers still fighting to get into the playoffs too, man. So this will just be an interesting game. I don't really have a huge read on it. Rangers down from minus 220 to minus 209. 96% of the tickets, 99% of the cash. Money might be coming in against them a little bit because I think the need might be a little bit greater for Calgary, although I don't think Calgary is that good. I mean, obviously, Rangers line is a pretty big favorite there. I don't know which other of these games I want to talk about. I mean, Detroit is still kind of battling to try to get into the playoffs. They have not been playing great hockey, but they did just beat Vegas. Big win for them. Now they go out on the road to face Washington. This is another big game for Detroit, though. I mean, they got to keep winning to try to get into the playoffs. Washington, they're going to be fine. They're returning home from the Pacific Coast. Even though it was only a 3-game road trip out there, it's still a road trip to the Pacific Coast. And I say when you return home from a road trip like that, a lot of times you're in a bit of a distracted spot. So we might see that being the case for Washington. Detroit needs the game more. And I think that's why you see the line moving against Washington down from minus 205 to minus 176. 89% of tickets, 81% of the cash. So money coming in on Detroit. I do agree with that one. Let's see. What else do we have here? I thought I played one of these games. Oh, yeah, I did. Let's talk about it now because only a couple other games really worth talking about. Utah is going to be my play as an underdog. You can either split this, like I always say, you could split half puck line at plus 1.5 goals, but you have to probably pay about minus 170 for that, and then half on the money line at about plus 154, or just go balls to the wall and do the whole thing on the money line because you get to pay less for it at least. But of course, if you play the puck line, if they come within 1 goal, then you'll actually win a slight amount. So that's kind of the difference there. If you play both halves of the bet to win the same amount because you're paying less on the money line part of it. I like Utah here, even though Utah looks public here with 73% of tickets and only 60% of the cash. I don't love that. But the line has gone way down on Edmonton from minus 190 to minus 164. So I think you can take something away from this line movement a little bit, man, where it looks like the money is coming in on Utah. I agree with it. I really hope they don't turn out to be a public underdog because that's not something you really want to be on. But I think the spot is better for Utah here, man. Yeah, they just beat Vancouver, so that's a good win. They're staying in the Pacific Northwest area, though, going to Edmonton. You know they're going to step up for Edmonton, man. I mean, Edmonton won the conference last year. You may see I'm a little bit worried that Ingram's going to be in net here because Vejmelka has played so many games in a row. Excuse me, and Ingram is the worst of the two goalies. But either way, I think the spot sets up more nicely for Utah. And the fact that the line is moving towards Utah kind of indicates that the goalie situation isn't that much of an issue. Utah, they're fighting to get into the playoffs, man. They're kind of right there, like 2 points out of the wild card right now. So they're definitely fighting to try to get into the playoffs. So that's a big motivator. Edmonton, even though they haven't had the season that they really wanted to this year, they're obviously going to be in the playoffs. It's possible that they fall to a wild card, but they're sitting pretty decently for a playoff spot right now. Utah needs the game more, and then Edmonton is returning home from a road trip, man. They've been on the road for more than a week. They went all the way out to the East Coast, Buffalo, and then the New York area, split the road trip, but they won the last 2 games, including beating the Rangers to finish the road trip. Now they're coming back home to face this Utah team that, even though Utah is fighting for a wild card spot, Edmonton does have a pretty big advantage over them. They might overlook them a little bit. I don't know if it's going to be Skinner or Picard in net here. Skinner kind of bounced back and had a nice game in the last game after he wasn't playing well. I'm not sure that either of their goalies are really that trustworthy, so I don't know that it really matters that much. But Edmonton also has Winnipeg up next, man. That's a big game up against Winnipeg. So I think it's a sandwich spot. Basically, it's a return home spot, which, like I say, you got to get back to home life. It tends to be a distracted spot. Utah, as far as playoff positioning, needs the game more. Give me Utah in that one. And then Winnipeg and Vancouver. Winnipeg does have Edmonton up next, so maybe a look ahead there, but they're up from minus 140 to minus 157. Money is coming in on Winnipeg there, even though Vancouver is coming off that loss to Utah too. And Vancouver probably has more need as far as the playoff positioning is concerned than Winnipeg does, because Winnipeg is more secure in their spot. So we'll see what happens there. And then we do 4 NBA games. I kind of lean to Atlanta. I mean, Charlotte, they're a bad team, and they are returning from the Pacific Coast. Weird road trip where they were actually still in the Southeast. Then they went to Texas. Then one game on the Pacific Coast, and they got crushed by LA, by the Clippers. Now they're back home. I think it's a bad spot, but it is revenge for Charlotte because they lost at Atlanta during that road trip by double digits. So maybe that's the one reason why they might be focused. Other than that, you're looking at a bad team in an unfocused spot and a return home spot. Don't love that. And Atlanta, the reason why I wouldn't really want to play them is because I believe they ended up back-to-back. Were they one of my losses? No, they played 2 days ago. They lost 2 days ago for me. I do lean Atlanta here, man. I mean, they're still fighting for playoff positioning. They're trying to get out of the play-in spot where they're going to have to be a road team. They do have a chance to be a home team in a play-in game, which I think does matter a little bit. So they still have reason to play here. So I think the motivation is all on the Atlanta side. It's a bad spot for Charlotte, even though there is that revenge angle. Charlotte's obviously the worst team, but I played the Hawks in a similar situation 2 days ago, and they completely failed on me. So I'm not going to play it, but if I was going to play any NBA game today, it would be that. Hawks up from 4 to 6 with juice, 83% of tickets, 93% of the cash. I do lean to the Hawks. I like the Hawks in that one. Nets are at the Celtics. I mean, I don't know what to take away from this other than the Celtics just beat Brooklyn on the road. So it is a little bit of a road revenge spot for the Nets here. Celtics, they only have Utah next. That's not really a big game either, so I don't know. If you buy into the zigzag, then yeah, it would be Brooklyn, I guess, would be able to make some adjustments. But then again, the Celtics almost lost to Brooklyn, so it was actually a scare for the Celtics as a huge favorite, and Brooklyn actually covered that game. So you could argue it's the Celtics that will actually have the adjustments to make here and come out with a better performance. I don't know. A lot of times these games at home against bad teams, the Celtics don't pay attention to these teams, but because the Nets played them close in the last game, maybe they will actually show up. 13.5-point favorite, Celtics there. Bucks and Warriors. Bucks have flipped from a 2.5-point dog to a 3.5-point favorite with juice, which has to really indicate that the Warriors are resting players or something. There's nothing on the injury report for the Warriors, so I don't really know what the deal is there. The Warriors played last night, though, so they are in a back-to-back, and they lost to Denver. It's a tough spot, man. It was a big game against Denver. They're in a back-to-back now, a third game in 4 days, all at home, though. But still, that also broke a win streak for them. So when you have a big game that's a national TV game like that against a good team, you lose the game, and it breaks a win streak of yours, that can definitely have a hangover effect. So I agree with the Milwaukee side, but I don't want to lay points here, and I just don't know what the personnel is here because there's no way the Bucks would be a 3.5-point favorite unless Golden State is resting people. The Bucks are coming off a pretty ugly loss, even though it was to Oklahoma City. They lost by 16 at home. Now they get to go out on the road to kind of forget that, put that out of mind and focus on basketball to start a road trip. So it is a positive spot for Milwaukee. Definitely a better spot for Milwaukee. I just can't lay 3.5 on the road, man, when I don't even know why the line is that high, because obviously Golden State would be a little bit of a favorite, I think, if they actually had their full complement of players playing in this game. Because it's a back-to-back, and last night's game was a big game, I assume probably they're resting guys here, so that would be my guess. Milwaukee is still playing a third game in 4 days as well, though, and then Cleveland is at the Clippers. Cleveland just lost to Orlando, and that's kind of an ugly loss as a big home favorite, but could be a loss that hangs you over a little bit because that did break their win streak that they had there. But then again, they are starting a road trip, coming off a bad loss, so they may actually be focused for this game on the Clippers. Clippers, on the other hand, have Cleveland coming into their place, so you know they're going to be focused as well. They return home and they won against Charlotte in an easy win anyway, so the spot sets up decently for the Clippers. Cavs up from 3.5 to 5, though. 94% of tickets, 99% of the cash. I don't know what to think about that, really. The money coming in on the Cavs. Not sure I would totally agree with that. And then MLB, I just forgot to point out, I apologize for not analyzing this yesterday, forgetting that this game, I knew this game was going to be today, but because it's in Korea, this counts as a regular season game, man. We get the 2 early regular season games between the Dodgers and the Cubs with the Asian starting pitchers there out in Korea, just like last year. But this is a 6:10 a.m. Eastern game, so I apologize for that. I missed out on that. It looks like the Dodgers are going to win, but the Dodgers were pretty public here, man, and the line kind of moved against them, so I would probably have not wanted the Dodgers in this game. It looks like it was a good pitching performance, unlike last year where both of these guys were rookies, and they both really, really struggled in this game, Yamamoto and Imanaga, but now that they have an entire season out of the way, they're in rhythm, and it looks like they both had good pitching performances in this one. So this is a good pitching matchup. The under absolutely made sense in this game, which is kind of unfortunate. I don't like to touch these like weird Korea games, but the under probably made sense, and the total was high. Maybe because the stadium is more hitter conducive or whatever. Down from 8.5 to 8 with juice to the under. 63% of tickets and 63% of tickets were on the over. 85% of the cash on the under. So the under in a pitching matchup like that, I think did make sense. And it looks like the under is absolutely going to hit there. And that total seems high for a pitching matchup like that. So I don't know what the deal was there. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. My plays today are in the NIT, Oklahoma State -6, hockey, Utah +154, or split the bet, puck line half of the bet and money line half the bet. That's going to do it. Let's enjoy the start of these tournament games, man. I'll probably do a video where I show like how I'm filling out my bracket tomorrow night, maybe after we see who plays in. But Tower Gang is also tomorrow night. Tower Gang Toad on Twitter, patreon.com/Tower Gang. You get bonus content. Do it. And that's going to do it for now, man. Peace.